Hi, everybody, and welcome. We're live. We're on the fourth Turning Point event. And those of you that have sat in on all of them, we've been going since the 23rd of November, specifically with the awakening to the Golden Age. And now we're looking at the turning point, which is shifting astrologically into the age of Aquarius, which is so exciting. And I've got a little bit of gold news for us, and that is that Errol Weiner, an astrologer of many years. In fact, he was the astrologer at Findhorn. Findhorn, you can go and Google if you're not sure of Findhorn, in the very topmost, northernmost part of Scotland. He was the astrologer there. And Errol has been practicing, talking, and eating and living the age of Aquarius literally for the last 50 years or so. He is 72. So he's been giving me some nice information, and he's going to join us today. So that's really exciting because he's really got it sewn up, and it's just awesome to see you all. And, really, we should have really got a lot more people in. But in any case, he is always available for us. So that's just great. What I wanted to do is talk specifically about, this major turning point right now. And Errol's going to elaborate a lot more upon it. But practically, Saturn and Jupiter are moving out of Capricorn, the house of Capricorn, and into the house of Aquarius tomorrow. I think I see Jules has listened in. I think it's at 6:22 GMT. That's London. So work it out, because that is the definitive shift. And just hold on. Here's Errol. Hello, Errol.
Let me give it to you. 076.
Yes.
368 04
Yeah.
84.
All right. I'll call you that in a minute or two. I'll call you back.
Right. Great.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. All right. So that is definitively happening exactly at that time tomorrow. And there's all sorts of overlighting angels that guard over this shift. And it happened 800 years ago. Not only the shift into Aquarius, but also the 4 major planets are going to be in alignment. And I'm going to leave that part for Errol to discuss with us. When that happened 800 years ago, we shifted from the medieval times into the age of the Renaissance, with a burst of energy, a burst of creativity, burst of light shifting through. And that, I think, is exactly what's going to be happening now. It's not going to be exactly night and day, but it's going to be of equal enormity. And personally, I think, wow, we've weathered the storm. We've weathered this crisis of this year. And wow, I think those of us that have pulled through, I'm actually really amazed that we've got this far, that we've got through to the end of this year, and we've ridden the crest of the wave, and we've been able to witness what's going on. That was really my end goal, that we could be witnesses to what's happening and not in it and entrapped in 3D. So if you just excuse me for a second, I'm just going to call Errol now, and then talk a little bit more. Wow, that's awesome. Lovely to see you all. Okay, so let me give him a quick shout. So those of you who've just joined us recently, I'm calling Errol Weiner. He's an astrologer, and he was the main astrologer at Findhorn, which is a little town, Aquarian age town, if you like, right in the north of Scotland, right at the top. So I'm just going to give him a call here. All right. And then he's going to speak to us as well. And I did post some things in our group too. So really nice. I'm sure he's going to pick up any moment.
Hi.
Hello, Errol. How are you?
Good, darling.
Good. Welcome. You're You're on air. You're on the 365 Healthy by Choice Quantum WhatsApp group. And today I also posted your information sheet from yesterday regarding, you know, the literally the planet alignments. And I've given people an introduction about you and being the astrologer at Findhorn in the north of Scotland. So people just got a bearing. And I've also said to them, you know, you've been living the age of Aquarius for the last 50 or more years anyway. So if there's anyone who knows about it, it's you, practically. And then everybody, Errol Weiner does the most amazing birth chart readings, natal readings, and it's almost every year. This time of the year, it's Errol and I sit down and we have a look and we see what's in it for me for next year, and obviously the earth, humanity, and everything as well. So we can talk more about that afterwards, but I do urge you to, because it just makes common sense about everything. It's there, it's written in the stars. So for me, if the knowledge is there, let's move forward. And one thing for sure, and Errol, you'll bear this out as well, is that we can't move into the age of Aquarius without considering astrology. It is absolutely part and parcel of the age of Aquarius. Am I right, Errol?
Well, I mean, that's how you get the term the age of Aquarius. If you didn't have astrology, then people, of course, couldn't know about the age of Aquarius or when we move into the age of Aquarius. So, you know, without astrology, it's impossible to know about the astrological ages, whether the past ages or the present ages. And so, without astrology, I mean, but even with, for instance, tomorrow at about, you know, sort of 10 o'clock a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, so noon South African time, we have the solstice.
Yes.
And the solstice is worked out, but when the sun, so someone says, well, how do you know when the solstice is? How do you know the date and the time of the solstice? How do you find that out? Well, the way you find it out is that when the sun moves into Capricorn, the day, which is tomorrow, and the time, which is 10:03 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, that's the solstice. So the only way you can work out the solstices or the equinoxes is via the science of astrology, which is interesting because if you said to an astronomer who doesn't believe in astrology, tell me, sir, tell me, madam, how do you work out when the solstice occurs? They would say, oh, it's when the sun moves into Capricorn. And you'd say, well, then you're talking about astrology. So why don't you believe in astrology if you just talked about astrology? But a lot of people don't know that that's the way you work out the actual date and time of the solstices and equinoxes. Without astrology, you couldn't work it out.
And Errol, you know, the ancients knew all this. And even the people that I've been telling the group about the millions of stone circles that are in South Africa and Zimbabwe. Every single stone circle is lined up with the equinox and the solstice, the north, south, east, and west. Every single one of them. And you can put every single stone circle on a CAD machine and you will see it's lined up astrologically. So those ancestors of ours, or that other civilization that came, really knew what they were doing.
Yeah, well, same as Stonehenge, of course, in Britain
as well,
and same as the Great Pyramid, of course, which is aligned perfectly. Also, you know, there's some very good information on YouTube on the Great Pyramid and its alignment, and you know, absolute proof that it was created. It was built 12,000 years ago in the age of Leo, which is the opposite age of Aquarius. That's why you have the Sphinx with the lion's body and the face of the Virgin, so to speak, because it was built in the Virgo Leo astrological ages. It wasn't built 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, and it wasn't built by humans because the slabs themselves weigh 50 to 100 tons, and they're all put so perfectly in place that you couldn't even put a piece of paper in between a slab And no human, even today, we don't have the technology to build the Great Pyramid.
No.
So, that's perfectly aligned, too.
So, really exciting times ahead. And, would you care to kind of, introduce us and take us through, that posting that you did yesterday and the main essence of, let's say, the solstice, and then if we could talk just a little bit about the main principles of the Age of Aquarius, and I would like to specifically look at freedom. Errol, could we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you started off by telling us, I'm just going to check here what you were saying, first of all, that this is an end of a major crisis turning point, and moving into the energy field of Capricorn, moving out of out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn. You were telling us.
Yeah, well, the sun, when today, for example, which is the last day before the solstice, the sun is in the very, very end of Sagittarius, because tomorrow it moves into Capricorn, and that's what the solstice is, then it moves into Capricorn. So that's happening, as I said, at 10 o'clock a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, South African time, noon, and everyone in every country has to adjust the time to their local time. Okay,
just say that again. Just say that again. So tomorrow morning at what time?
At 10:03 Greenwich Mean Time.
10:03 GMT, yeah.
Which means South African time is, of course, 12:03.
12:03.
All countries have to adjust their time in terms of their local time.
So what's happening exactly then?
So that's when the sun moves into Capricorn, and you have the solstice. So then, as the sun moves into the sign of Capricorn, the 10th sign of the zodiac, on the date tomorrow and the time, that is the solstice. That's how you work out the solstice. So obviously in the northern hemisphere, the solstice is occurring, of course, in winter, and in the southern hemisphere here, of course, in Australia, etc., if we are moving into summer solstice, and in the north they move into winter solstice, but it's still in the sign of Capricorn.
Yeah.
So it's the same sign, but different manifestation. So that's the solstice. That's where the sun moves into Capricorn. But the great conjunction, where Saturn and Jupiter are meeting in the exact same degree, that is occurring in the very beginning of Aquarius. And that's at 6:22 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So in other words, we're having a very fascinating day tomorrow, that where the sun's moving into Capricorn, which is the solstice, and at the same time in the evening, Saturn and Jupiter have moved out of Capricorn and are now making exact conjunction, which occurs about once every 400 years in the sign of Aquarius, having moved out of Capricorn. They've been in Capricorn the whole year, 2020, and now they move out permanently from Capricorn and into Aquarius. So the conjunction is in Aquarius, not in Capricorn, which makes a big difference. So this occurs about once every 400 years. And if you go back 400 years, that's sort of 17th century and then like the 13th century. And the 13th century was when we had this great period of Renaissance in Europe, in almost everything from A to Z, which was kind of a repercussion of the Great Conjunction. And then if you go back, the one that is kind of most important in terms of the one that's occurring tomorrow is in 7 BC, when you had the Great Conjunction in the sign of Pisces, which was the beginning of the age of Pisces. And the story of the star in the east, which the three magi, or three white magicians, who are all astrologers, Babylonian, Chaldean, and Egyptian astrologers, followed to find the birthplace of Jesus. They followed the so-called star in the east. That star in the east is the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter.
As well.
So then it was yes, as well.
Yeah.
And you'll see tomorrow night, if you between about 6:30 and 7, if people look up into the heavens, they will see a very, very bright star in the heavens, very bright, which is basically Saturn and Jupiter making conjunction, and it will look like a star. In other words, although it's two planets, the two biggest planets in our solar system, coming together in a very close conjunction in Aquarius, it will look like a star, and people will look up and say, "Oh, there's the star in the east, or there's the Christmas star, or there's the Star of Bethlehem," because these are various names that people give to that conjunction.
Amazing.
And because the astrologers 2,000 years ago, who were very advanced astrologers, knew about that. They knew because it was occurring in Pisces that the age of Pisces was starting, and that the so-called avatar Messiah for the Piscean age, who was Jesus, was being born at that stage. And so that was called a triple conjunction. So it occurred first in May, then in September, then in December. And so they had time, so to speak. They knew about this. They had time to travel from the different countries to Jerusalem, to Bethlehem, to Palestine, because it wasn't Israel at that stage, it was Palestine, and to be able to go and present the frankincense, myrrh, and gold, which represent light, love, and power, to Mary, and to share with her many things about about the life of Jesus, what he incarnated to do, what he was going to be the Messiah of the Piscean age. Mary, of course, didn't know these things. She knew from contact with the angel Gabriel that Jesus was not just a normal child being born, that there was a special mission he was coming in to achieve. And she was told that, not so much by the angel Gabriel, but by the three astrologers, the three magi, who were also white magicians, who were informed secretly, obviously, of a lot of what's going to happen, that Jesus was coming in, he was the avatar of the Piscean age, etc., etc., etc. So now this time, the conjunction is occurring in Aquarius. In other words, about initiating the age of Aquarius. That's why it's such an important conjunction. It's not just occurring in the normal 400-year cycle of this conjunction, but in a 2,000-year cycle, which is when the new astrological ages begin and the old astrological ages come to an end. And you could say that 220 was the year in which the old age, so to speak, and the old paradigm was coming to an end, which means that 220 was like a death cycle, a major death cycle before the rebirth occurs, and we enter that energy field we call Aquarius, or the age of Aquarius. And that's why it's been such a difficult year. It still is in one sense like a very difficult year, because it was a death cycle. Things were coming to a close, and so you had the pandemic and the lockdowns and the economic collapse, which is carrying on. Of course, at this very moment, the US dollar is actually collapsing, and if the US dollar collapses, which is the global currency, exchange currency, then basically the US is kaput, because without its currency being a global currency, there's no reason why other countries are going to be using the US dollar as the global exchange currency. So this is happening very, very quickly, and it's a kind of culmination of 2020 before we move into the age of Aquarius.
Sure.
What Saturn, Jupiter in conjunction in Aquarius means is that this year, when Saturn and Jupiter have been going through Capricorn, so Saturn's been going through Capricorn for 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020. Jupiter was going through Capricorn for 1 year, 2020. So they were both in Capricorn in 2020. So what that means is that the energy of Capricorn comes through those planets, and then a combination of Capricorn and Jupiter and Saturn comes through into the earth and into humanity, into the nations and so on, and creates what occurred in 2020. Because Capricorn is a sign of the two-horned mountain goat that symbolizes the human ego, human duality, climbing the mountain. And when it reaches the top, it reaches the apex. It can't go further than Capricorn. Capricorn is like the mountaintop of the ego, whether it's a national ego or collective ego or a personal ego or a group ego, or everyone's ego, whether it's collective, national, personal, family, society, etc., can't go further than Capricorn. It can reach the mountaintop, the relative mountaintop, obviously, but it can't go further. Once it reaches the mountaintop, the ego is finished. It has nowhere else to go except to self-destruct or self-dissolve, and or, of course, to move into the soul. Because beyond the mountaintop is the soul, you might say. It's like space, if you wanted to, which is a symbol of the soul. And Aquarius energy doesn't govern the ego. It only governs the soul. Aquarius energy is beyond Capricorn. The 11th sign, Capricorn's the 10th sign. So it embodies soul energy, not ego energy. So the moment these two planets make conjunction tomorrow night in Aquarius, Aquarius energy starts coming through these two planets, which represent Jupiter and Saturn, represent spirit and matter, or the soul and the personality, or the inner and the outer aspects of life, or inspiration and intuition, and then the creative action which manifests the intuition, inspiration, revelation, knowledge and understanding of the soul. So it's a massive swap. It's like almost like moving from the highest aspects of the ego and whatever the ego can attain, relatively, of course, for everyone. Then once it's reached Capricorn, which is now, because tomorrow, like as I said, these two planets are now in Aquarius, the ego can't go further. So the ego system starts to collapse. Everywhere the ego systems, the political ego system, the economic ego system, the social ego system starts to collapse and disintegrate and self-destruct in the rightful sense of the word, as a kind of preparation for tomorrow night, when the Aquarius energy starts coming through and impacts into our planet and humanity, into the nations, etc. And the whole energy field of the planets starts changing from Capricorn to Aquarius. So that's why it's such a massive change, which we'll see manifesting from tomorrow night, and then of course through into the new year and right through 2021, because Jupiter will be in Aquarius for 1 year, 2021, and Saturn will be in Aquarius for 3 years, 2021, 22, 23. So the next 3 years are basically Aquarius impact energy replacing the sort of Capricorn impact energy.
So this is why everywhere we look, the devices that we use, every person, every second person, there's a message that comes through, release the struggle, surrender. And I suppose those of us that have used our intuition, our imagination, and created a future space for ourselves will be much easier, and it will be less of a battle. And those that hold on to the negatives of the past, the old patterns, and resist it, would possibly say they would have a little bit more of a tough time.
Well, it's going to be like that, because obviously in this process, like in all processes, all humans have choice. Divine, every human being has a choice. Every nation has a choice. Every couple has a choice. Every family has a choice, and so on, about what path they'll follow. I mean, remember that beautiful Bob Dylan CD called "A Slow Train Is Coming," which he had this beautiful song. Like he was saying, like, doesn't matter if you're a politician, doesn't matter if you're an artist, doesn't matter if you're a congressman, doesn't matter if you're a businessman, blah, 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 etc. You're going to have to choose somebody. You're going to have to serve somebody. Either you're going to have to serve the Lord, or you're going to have to serve the devil. Meaning, symbolically, literally, you're going to have to serve the spiritual, constructive dimension of life, or you're going to have to serve the negative, destructive dimension of life, symbolized by quote unquote the devil. And basically that was an amazing sort of CD by Bob Dylan, in which he was almost predicting the present time. It's like, make your choice. Are you going to serve the greater good, which is the same as saying serving the Lord, or you're going to serve selfishness and greed and avariciousness and so on, which symbolically is serving the devil. And that's the choice that people have to make. So when this energy moves into Aquarius, what's going to happen is that a lot of people who are consciously or unconsciously pioneers of the new age of Aquarius will find that the energy coming in moves them, pushes them, inspires them to start pioneering in a completely new type of world of culture, civilization, education, way of living, way of eating, etc., etc. And many people will be conscious of that, and many will not be conscious. They'll do it unconsciously, but just because they impulse by it and they want a better world. And then many other people will choose to remain back and not to enter that world, and will just start to self-destruct and self-collapse. Nations that don't follow that pattern will collapse, or societies or people will start collapsing without realizing what's happening. I mean, they won't realize that that's happening because they made that choice. So
Errol, is it a bit like staying entrapped in the third dimensional space as opposed to moving through 4 into 5 dimensional space?
Yes, in other words, it's like, are you going to remain trapped in your ego and your ego ambitions and your ego greed and ego avariciousness and ego way of eating and your ego way of thinking and your ego way of communicating and your ego way of relating and so on, which is basically, you might say, a selfish attitude towards life, if you took it from an overall perspective? Are you going to move into your soul, which is a selfless attitude towards life, a service-orientated attitude towards life, a constructive attitude towards life in which you wish to serve the good of humanity, your nation, people generally, life, the earth, and so on, so on? I mean, it's like a simple choice, because one choice is really soul energy, whether people realize it or not, and one choice is ego energy, whether they realize it or not, and everyone will make the choice. And if you look around what's happening, you'll see people are making that choice in one way or another. If you look at America, what's happened in America, I remember like Biden about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, said something like 2020 has been a battle for the soul of America, and the soul has been victorious, in the sense that a better system potentially is coming into manifestation with him and Kamala Harris and all the people that voted for the Democrats, and that a lot of other people, a good number of people, have decided not to do that. They've decided to remain with the past and remain with what's outdated and selfish, etc. And they are starting to get more destructive and more violent in the United States. So that's one example, but it's happening in every country. In Britain, as you were talking about earlier on, what's happening in Britain, what's happening in South Africa, and everyone's having to make the choice. But because the conjunction hasn't occurred in Aquarius yet, it's only occurring tomorrow night, so to speak, the energy impact of Aquarius is only coming through from tomorrow night. So people are not yet directly experiencing the impact of this Aquarius energy, because it's only happening tomorrow night at exactly 6:22 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. That's the exact time. It's a bit like, birth. For example, every human is born on a certain date and a certain time, right?
Yeah.
And it's only when they're born that they actually incarnate. They don't incarnate 5 minutes before they're born. They incarnate exactly the times that they're born, quote unquote. That's why you have to have the time of birth to draw up a birth chart. And it's the same with the collective event, like Saturn, Jupiter, and Aquarius. It's only when it actually occurs, the date and time, so 6:22 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, that the energy of Aquarius is born. It enters the energy field of our planet and humanity. So it hasn't yet done that. So people are not yet experiencing that impact, and they only know about it after tomorrow night.
Awesome. That's really great. So we're going to have a big shift. And as you say, it's a double. We're getting a double impact, energetic impact tomorrow, which is amazing. And just stop you there a moment. One of our listeners has said, when you were talking about the humility and surrendering, she says, I guess that's what happened for Sir Edmund Hillary when he summited Everest. He was an extraordinarily humble, quiet man.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because although Edmund Hillary did that, it was actually his Nepalese guide that actually got there first. He only got there second. The Nepalese guide actually ascended to the top of the Himalayas first, and then Edmund Hillary got there. But he got all the accolades, of course, because he was a white guy. And the Nepalese guide, who was quite an amazing guy too, and Edmund Hillary loved him, was the one actually who got there first. That was reported because it was only reported he got there. But it's a bit like the Capricorn accent. You know, you go up the mountain, and what happens with the Capricorn is very interesting. Because it's happening right now, the last few days. You know, sort of kind of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, let's say. That the mountain goat, when it's climbing the mountain of Capricorn, the human mountain goat, it's using its very powerful will, its very powerful force, its tenacity, its power, and so on, to reach the mountaintop. Else it couldn't get there in any case. And humans have amazing tenacity, amazing sort of adaptability, amazing focus when it comes to achieving their goals. The ego is quite an amazingly powerful entity. I mean, remember, like the ego has been in hundreds and hundreds of incarnations. It's an incredibly powerful entity. But before it reaches the mountaintop, it has to surrender. In other words, it can't reach the mountaintop until it first surrenders. It must surrender first. And then it reaches the mountaintop and symbolically turns into a unicorn, a one-horned white unicorn, which is a symbol of the soul. So the two-horned goat, when it ascends to the mountaintop, transfigures into the one-horned unicorn, which is a symbol of the soul. And that's happening right now. You might say that if we could see it or sense it, everyone, including humanity, including nations, is reaching the mountaintop and turning into a one-horned unicorn, which is basically relative because everyone's, how should we say, level of consciousness of being a soul is different. It's very different if you take in the first initiation or the second initiation or the third initiation, for example, of soul identification, because everyone is different. When a person first comes onto the spiritual path and they just begin their spiritual path, they just begin to learn, begin to meditate, it's very different to someone who's been doing it for 10 or 20 years, and it's very different to someone who's been doing it for 40, 50 years. Each person is a different space, but you still reach a relative soul identification. So that's happening to the whole of humanity now, unconsciously.
It's amazing.
And only when the energy of Aquarius comes through do people get the imprint or the information or the revelation or the inspiration based upon their state of consciousness to move into more of a soul type of life than an ego type of life.
And Errol, I mean, we're talking about proper moving. I think also, just to bring this in a little bit, is that we're finishing off with the Kali Yuga and moving into the Satya Yuga next 26,000 years as well.
Well, according to some people, I read that. But as far as I know, having studied yoga, because, as you know very well, I was a yogi for 5 years with Manny Finger in Johannesburg and taught at his school. According to what I know about the Indian mythology in terms of the yugas, according to what the Hindus say, the Kali Yuga is still active for quite a good while. So the Indian system of the yugas, or there are four, is obviously very different to the Western system of the 12 astrological ages, which occur in a milestone every 2,000 years. So some people have said that the Kali Yuga is coming to a close as the Piscean age comes to a close. But as far as I'm aware, according to the Hindus I've spoken to, when I studied that when I was a yogi,
Yeah.
the Kali Yuga has still got quite a way to go before it comes to a close, and the sort of what's called the more positive kind of light Yuga comes in. So this is, I'm relating it more to Aquarius than to the.
Okay.
To that. Although if it is coordinating, well, great, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a double whammy, so that's good.
So if that is happening, then we are hopefully then leaving behind the materialistic part of the ego, and we're moving into more the intelligence space. But the higher intelligence is what you're referring to.
Yes, but once again, it will be the pioneers. You know, in the Christian teachings, but not talking about Christian teachings, but the teachings of the Christ, which of course are very, very different, because a lot of Christians these days, evangelical Christians and so on, fundamentalist Christians, misinterpret the New Testament completely. They interpret the New Testament as Christians, and that is if Jesus is communicating with Christians. Whereas Jesus, of course, was not communicating with Christians, because there was no such thing as Christians until 430 years after the crucifixion, when Christianity was made into a formal religion by Emperor Constantinople Constantine in Constantinople. So until then, there wasn't Christianity. Until then, the so-called followers or disciples of Jesus had his teachings, what he taught, basically New Testament and the Gnostic teachings too, which are even more potent than the New Testament in a way. And then, because so many people were following those teachings, it was decided, it was more political move than anything else, to establish a formal structured religion with the Pope and with cardinals and bishops and priests, etc., which of course is not all what Jesus wanted to happen, since Jesus had gone against the Jewish religious institution, the Pharisees, etc., because he was teaching truth and it had nothing to do with religion. But then that was formulated. And from that time on, there's been a brainwashing that basically says that the Christ teachings were given to Christians, which of course is not true. They were given to humanity, not to Christians. And so much of what is said in the New Testament and in Revelations, which is the more esoteric aspect of the New Testament, which is the final book of the New Testament, Christians then take as related to Christians and not to humanity, but it's to humanity. And in that it says that there will be, when the New Age starts, which is symbolized when Jesus talks about the man with the water pitcher, which is a symbol of Aquarius, that 144,000 people will lead humanity, quote unquote, into the new age of the water carriers. The 144,000 people are the pioneers who are going to lead humanity into the age of Aquarius, the age of the planetary water carriers. It's not water. The water carriers got nothing to do with water. It's got to do with spiritual, living waters, the spiritual waters, not emotional waters. So when this impact happens tomorrow night, and then we move into 2021, all around the planet, from every nation, every city, and so on, these 144,000 pioneers, initiates, many who are conscious, but many who are not conscious of the fact that they're part of 144, will start emerging into the light in different ways and start pioneering all the different facets of the New Age.
Okay.
They're not Christians. I mean, some of them are Christians, obviously, but most of them are not so-called former Christians. They're just human beings who happen to be intent on serving the greater good of humanity. And then the rest of humanity, of course, 7.8 billion people, will see in one way or another these people doing things which are pioneering in something completely different. And then a lot more people will choose to become part of that because they'll see it's for the greater good, for the greater good of humanity, their countries, themselves. And more people will start, shall we say, aligning themselves with 144,000. Christians think that the 144,000 means 144,000 Christians, but it's got nothing to do with Christians. Okay. It's got to do with human beings.
Sure.
Yeah. So, this will manifest in all different ways. It won't just manifest in terms of what we understand as spiritual impulses. It'll manifest politically. It'll manifest economically. It'll manifest socially, it'll manifest through the arts, it'll manifest through the sciences, it'll manifest through ecology and environment, it'll manifest through food, and
even you know, the whole medicine thing is going to go back to, you know, moral healing and truthful healing, and, you know, giving the body what it needs to rebalance, as opposed to this, you know, hard-hitting synthetic abuse, you could say, that we've all endured.
So we'll see lots of, I mean, one of the main manifestations of Aquarius is like, when people ask the question, how do people live, or should live, or will live in the new age of Aquarius, in terms of Aquarius energy per se? First of all, there's two things about that. Three things, really, they're all interconnected. Well, four things, actually. First of all, it individualizes people's consciousness. People become individualized. They start thinking for themselves, intuiting for themselves, making decisions and choices for themselves from within themselves.
Yeah.
So it comes from within. So you individualize. You no longer become some kind of, you know, zombie that just listens to what the politicians, what the medical profession, what the economists, what the religions say. You individualize. That's the first impact. The second impact, which happens simultaneously, by the way, so this is quite interesting, is that Aquarius energy is so powerful because it embodies and manifests electrical energy, a very powerful electrical energy. And because of that, no one individual can receive Aquarius energy in and by themselves. They have to work in group formation. There has to be a group energy, so the Aquarius energy comes into the different members of the group and is not too potent for one individual.
Okay.
So while the individual is awake, while many people, this will happen very quickly, as people will see once this happens, huge numbers of people will start individualizing, thinking for themselves, making choices for themselves, making decisions for themselves, listening to their intuition, that they're aware of it or not, and so on. At the same time, they'll start moving into group formation. Whether those groups will be physical groups because of the pandemic, or whether it will be groups that are operating via the internet, which of course is already happening. Like, for instance, you and the people that are part of your energy are a group.
Correct.
And a network.
Yeah.
Automatically. So they're all individuals, and they're all waking up as individuals, but at the same time, they're operating in a group situation, in a network situation, whether it's physical or whether it's via the internet, etc. The same with our group of people that we have around the world, and thousands of others like us around the world, maybe tens of thousands of others like us around the world.
Yes.
We all have our particular type of group energy field and network energy field. So that will happen. The impact will come right into the network, into the group, and into the individual simultaneously. And then finally, of course, that's all connected globally, because what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're manifesting, and so on, it has a global impact, because we're interested in the planet. We're not interested particularly only in our countries, only in our race, only in our locality. We're interested in how it impacts locally, obviously, because that's practical, and globally. So individual, group, network, global, all occurring simultaneously as this energy impact comes in.
And the third thing?
Well, because it's very difficult for people to try and comprehend this. I know it sounds kind of sort of simple, but it's actually quite a big thing. Imagine energy impact that's coming in to the planetary energy web, so that comes into the etheric body of the planet, into the etheric web around the planet, and then penetrates physically. And it's coming to the etheric web of humanity, and it's coming into the etheric web of nations, right? And then from there, it impacts into networks, and then it impacts into groups, right? And then it impacts into the individual. But they're all happening simultaneously. This is what's difficult. It's all happening at exactly the same time, that impact into all those units of consciousness. I mean, it's almost impossible for our minds to comprehend that, how it's happening, and it happens very quickly. Aquarius is probably the fastest sign of the zodiac. Energy impacts very instantaneously. You might say, if you put it like that, like electricity.
See, and when you talk like that, you know, we've all studied this, and with our devices and things, we know we're electromagnetic beings. So if we're going to be sort of supercharged very quickly, wouldn't that also then reflect on the activation of our DNA?
Yes, and that's also the next thing, because of course when it impacts into the individuals, it's impacting into the chakras. Then it's impacting into the cells, and into the atoms, and into the DNA, and this is all occurring simultaneously. I mean, try and all of us try and imagine that energy impact, this Aquarian impact, is coming into the collective, right through to the energy centers, right through to the cells, 50 trillion cells, right through to the billions of atoms, and into the DNA, all simultaneously. That's how quick. Now, for instance, computer technology and email and so on is archetypically Aquarius energy. That is Aquarius energy. In fact, Uranus, which governs Aquarius, is a planet which governs computers and technology.
Right.
Now, when we do an email, and of course, you know, in the mid-80s or late 80s, because I remember when we got our first laptop computer in those days, which were the first ones to come out. And if someone would have said, you're going to have something called email, and then when you do, you type this sort of email, and then you press a button, and that it reaches the person you're sending it to instantaneously, in the same second. People would have said, you know, put this guy in a straitjacket.
Exactly.
You know, this guy's mad.
Totally.
He says you'll be able to do this thing called email, and if the message goes to anyone around the planet, or a group of people, or a network of people around the planet, instantaneously. People would have said it's impossible, don't talk shit, these things don't happen. And then, of course, it happened. So that's like Aquarius energy. It impacts instantaneously right through all the energy systems, which is very different to Capricorn, because Capricorn energy comes in very slowly. It's very slow energy, because Capricorn's an earth sign, whereas Aquarius is an air sign. So we're talking about earth energy, which is very slow, kind of dull, you know, kind of heavy. That's Capricorn, like 2020. And then Aquarius energy comes in, which is air energy, which is space, email, so to speak, the internet. And everything is interconnected instantaneously. And that energy is coming in now. I mean, we are about to have that energy impact upon the whole of humanity. It's completely new. It's totally different. It's coming out of the blue. And the repercussions for it, of course, are totally impossible to comprehend.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen when that happens?
And you know,
not even the... Yeah.
Sorry?
And not even the wisest people on the planet. You know, all the wisest people put together would be able to understand what is about to be the impact.
You know, and this is when you're talking, and everybody part of this group, you know, this is where I just think this quantum medicine, the device that we use, which works in the subspace. It's a virtual device, basically. I mean, it works, yes, by biofeedback, but it works in the subspace. And like you say, I mean, if you say to people, look, we're going to do an assessment of your risk factors. I'm here, you're in Los Angeles, and we get it and it's spot on accurate. And then we can actually then trickle feed, you know, realignment frequencies, and in 1 hour shift you. It's quite inconceivable to many people, but it's going to be the reality very soon, because like you just said, people will be vibrating at a much higher level and understand and be able to cope with the realities of what our devices do.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, it's literally as if we think about computer technology, IT technology, just what you've been talking about. It's all instantaneous. It's all global. It all occurs in the same split second that the device is activated, like email or whatever you want to call it, in terms of, you know, the IT technology. And then you say, well, That's Aquarius, but that's kind of the first phase of Aquarius energy coming in, which is kind of more almost what we call technological, what we call physical, technological, etc. But imagine the impact if it hits humans. If humans start operating like IT technology.
That in the quantum space, exactly, and that's going to happen. There's no doubt about it, because I just think we're heading for that very intelligent race that was a part of the Egyptians, the ones that lined the planets up astrologically and all of that. I think that's where we're heading, and we're going to need to be able to communicate telepathically and energetically and all the rest of it. And when we're on that high vibration, we're not going to get ill like we're getting ill now,
Yeah, because, the Tibetan Master DK always says that all illness comes from non-alignment to the soul. That if people were aligned to their soul and their soul energy was flowed into their energy system as a flow in rather than being blocked mentally, emotionally, and so on, then diseases would vanish, because soul energy is such a high vibration that it automatically brings everything into alignment and into harmony. Of course, very few humans obviously are perfectly aligned to their soul, or else there wouldn't be diseases and ailments and so on and so on. But Aquarius energy is basically soul-based energy. So the soul energy starts flowing in very, very, very quickly and very directly. And suddenly impacts start occurring, which before people would have regarded as impossible. Not just to us as individuals, for instance, to national leaders. Suddenly get an impact of soul energy from what's called the angel or the soul of their nation, because every nation has an angel who's the overlighting sort of presence of the nation. And that energy comes through the angels, then comes straight into the leaders and governments, which before have been completely ego-based. So, I mean, one of the things about Trump and his administration, or Boris Johnson, his thing, etc., which has been good for us to understand, good for us to experience, is, this is the way the ego operates. Oh, I see, this is the ego. Self-destructive, selfish, greedy, avaricious, and so on and so on and so on. Ah, that's interesting. And then often, of course, what we do is we tend to project that as if those people are living egotistically, and we are not. But of course, we're all living, to whatever extent, egotistically, in the way we live our lives, etc. Now suddenly, if the soul energy comes in and starts impacting everyone, including national leaders, world leaders, the United Nations, and so on, people start getting so impacted, and before you know it, they start doing things, saying things, sharing things, communicating things which they would never have done before, because of the energy impact that's coming in very quickly. Very, very quickly. It's not this Aquarius energy doesn't come in over weeks or months or years.
I get it.
It literally comes in instantaneously.
In dollops, So Errol,
so people should be very aware, because everyone will be impacted in one or another like that they have fantastic dreams or fantastic revelations, or begin to have an intuitive understanding, or begin to speak or share, communicate to people in a way they've never done so before. And I'm thinking, where's this coming from? What's happening? And then they'll see all these changes occurring around the planet, in governments, in nations, in leaders, and so on and so on. At the same time, though, and people should be aware of this, obviously when something like that happens, which we call new, that which is old and out of alignment with that starts to collapse very, very quickly.
Okay.
So people have to be aware of that. There's no such thing as a massive rebirth if there's not also a massive death at the same time.
Yeah. But Errol, somebody's commented here, and she's just sort of saying, well, how do we maintain ourselves if it's going to be so quick? And so, I mean, is it going to be a balanced type of introduction of this energy? Because I think her question is sort of saying, are we going to wobble? How are we going to cope with this energy?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to wait and see what happens, because, as I said before, how do we know what this means? It's like almost impossible for our rational minds to comprehend what this means. So it's going to be very potent, very quick, very accelerated, very transformational, very illuminating, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And the same rules apply always. I mean, the rule of living day by day, doing this, everything that needs to be done daily with the right state of consciousness, washing the dishes, making the bed, hoovering the floor, looking after the garden, looking after the pets, and so on, always applies all the time, no matter what's happening. And of course, that is the only way people can really stabilize or anchor or ground themselves. They must do the small things properly. This is why we never employ any black people to come into our place and do what we call the small things in life. Wash the
that's
dishes,
old paradigm.
And white people must realize that they don't do the small things, they're missing out on one of the most important aspects of life, which is like do the small things with love, with attention, with as much love and attention as you do the big things that you do in your life. If you only want to do the big things and the small things are for black people or for domestic people, then you're missing the point. The point is that you need to do the small things. It doesn't mean you don't employ black people, but basically, if a black person is cleaning a house and you say, don't worry, I'll hoover the floor, and you hoover the floor, you've got no idea how that impresses the black person. It's kind of, hey, this is great, we're working together. You're not a domestic, we are cooperating as co-workers in cleaning a house, or whatever it might be.
The team, the team element.
We got a Zim gardener who comes here and basically he does the garden. But what we do is we work with him in the garden. And so we're working together in the garden. And that's how it's co-creative work. We're co-workers. We're not white people employing black domestic people. We are co-working together. And that doing that with small things is very, very, very important. It helps to ground everyone, ground people, anchor them, like the roots of a tree. Like the roots of a tree. So that's important, and people must do that no matter what's happening, because that's exceedingly important. And just to be conscious and aware of what's happening, probably very good for everyone to have a book and a pen beside their bed, especially because some of the revelations will come through dreams or flashes of intuition and so on. To put it down in the book, it's always very important to put things down in the book, because else you tend to forget about them quite easily. So that's a good thing to do. And then, of course, just as you know, to eat healthy food, and so on and so on. And I always like the Delphi Oracle. The Delphi Oracle is two keynotes, and the Delphi Oracle exists. It's wisdom that's existing today, not just in ancient Greece. Know thyself, which is, of course, a process which carries on infinitely. Know thyself. And second of all things in moderation. Everything in moderation. Don't do anything fanatically which is going out of moderation. If you like your wine, great, but don't drink too much. Drink it appropriately. If you like your beer, have a nice beer, but don't drink too much beer, and don't feel guilty if you're having a beer, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
all things
exactly.
In moderation. Yeah.
And with the right intention, hey?
Yeah, I mean, if you make love, don't make love more than 5 times a day, because you'll be exhausted.
You go over the bell-shaped curve. I always talk about the bell-shaped curve. Things are positive to a point, and then they become destructive.
Yes, because you know how many people you've probably met and we've met who say are very fanatical about being vegetarians or being macrobiotics or being vegans or whatever, and they're often very unhealthy. It's amazing how many vegan people we know who are very unhealthy because they don't live in moderation. They won't eat this, they won't eat that, they won't touch this, and their system goes out of balance because their mental and emotional bodies are so involved with this fanatical viewpoint that they actually create ill health.
And they're not listening to their soul.
Exactly. They're not listening to their intuition. Might say, for example, have a beer, but they won't do it because they're focused on only this is right and this is wrong. And if you're not listening to your intuition, then you're going to make a wrong decision.
Agreed. And Errol, just this has been a wealth of information. Thank you, and very anchoring. And if we can just end off by talking about the freedom, because all these songs are, and these new, this moving into this new chapter of our evolution is about the freedom. But I think if you don't do the surrender work, it's going to be very difficult to get to the freedom space.
Yes, I mean, in our last thing we sent out, we recommended a whole lot of songs that people should kind of remember. Because, I mean, look, we've just been through 1962, I would probably say for sure, the greatest revolution by far in human history.
Gee.
Humanity has awakened from the 1962, when 7 planets, in fact, aligned in Aquarius, and the Beatles came out with their first song. Like the last 50 years has just been like the greatest revolution in human history. And when it comes to music, I mean, God, have we had great music? And so most of the music we listen to is from our 60s and 70s music, because that's still the best music for us. Nothing's beating it. But I mean, you can go into YouTube and actually listen to the original version of "This is the Dawning of the Age of Aquarius." Yeah. It's cool.
We did. We listened to it the other day, last night, in fact.
The Fifth Dimension.
That's the one. Yeah.
I mean, that's such a beautiful song, and sung by the Fifth Dimension. You couldn't get a better kind of term for a group singing that. And then, of course, all the beautiful songs by Bob Dylan. The times they are changing. Neil Young, Joni Mitchell. All those fantastic musicians at the Beatles, of course, which were really Aquarius energy. That was really Aquarius energy. So
so they were already setting the scene for us. So, but let's just sort of knuckle down and what is this freedom actually?
Well, I think the main aspect of Aquarius freedom is, as I said, first of all, the main thing of freedom is that individuals must live from within themselves out, not from out in. In other words, people must live from within out. They must think for themselves. They must intuit for themselves. They must open their hearts and minds, which of course is an inner process. I mean, if you're opening up your heart and mind, you're opening up something inside yourself, not external to yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you have to, of course, listen to your intuition and obey your intuition and have trust and faith in your intuition, because obviously there are many times that intuition is very different to logic. I mean, I can't tell you how many times
that's right.
I've listened to our intuition and done something which seemed to be completely irrational. And when most people would think you're completely mad, your parents, your family, your friends, because you're listening to your intuition, which is the voice of your soul. That's freedom. Freedom is obeying your inner impulse, your inner intuition, your inner intelligence, and not listening to outside voices telling you what's right or what's wrong.
So if I can also quantify it from our studying with our quantum devices, you've got the the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious, and the consciousness is this logical part. The subconscious is the often, as you say, seems illogical, but that's actually where we need to be operating from, because the logical never gives you the answers, it gives you scenarios, but the subconscious will give you the solution.
Yeah, and of course, even more than that, the superconscious will give you, your intuitive inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, we all need our logical mind, because without our logical mind, we couldn't work our computers, we couldn't cook our food, we couldn't work a Hoover, we couldn't do anything which the rational world requires. That's what we got our logical mind for, which is of course a great divine instrument. But when we put the logical mind in the way of our superconscious mind, which is our intuition, then we sell our souls, so to speak, because then we start listening to outside voices, and whatever the politician tells us, or the economist tells us, or the medical expert tells us, we obey, because apparently these are the rational-minded experts telling us what's true, what's false, etc., etc.
Deception.
Like a couple of years ago, astronomers made the decision, that Pluto was not a planet, they said Pluto is no longer a planet. We don't regard it as a planet, and astronomy made that decision. And suddenly Pluto, which astrologers know, is a planet with its own energy. That's why we had the Pluto transits this year, which were causing all the things. Not a planet. And then suddenly, this year, astronomers, because one of the NASA spaceships had flown past Pluto, so to speak, and has now moved past Pluto into the beyond our solar system, because Pluto is the planet at the very edge of our solar system. They discovered, to their absolute shock, that beneath the crust of Pluto is a sea, an actual underworld sea on Pluto, which suddenly makes it a planet, because if it's got water, then it is a living planet. So now they changed their thing back. Now Pluto is a planet. Before they said Pluto was not a planet, and every astronomer around the world suddenly agreed it wasn't a planet. Now suddenly all astrologers have now agreed it is a planet. So if you listen to the voices of people on the outside, then you just get brainwashed and you become a zombie.
Yeah, I think we've got to tune out from this deception, because that, like you say, that is the that is what sideswipes us and creates a situation where we're not stable, where we're not grounded, and it comes through daily. It comes through by the minute on these YouTubes and things.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of courage. Look, I'm not trying to say that it doesn't take a lot of courage. You get an intuitive knowingness that something is right, or you should do something, and your so-called children or parents or family or friends tell you that you're crazy, you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't make that choice. And now you've got this choice. If I listen to my intuition and do, which is the voice of my soul, and do what they say, for instance, whenever we go out, Imogen is the one who is aligned completely to the soul on the inner levels. And I've been told that I must leave to Imogen. I must not do that myself. My work is different. She is the one who is aligned directly to the soul and gets information. Now, when we work with the soul, what we do is often we use just the things, say yes or no. So, for instance, with the pandemic, whenever we go out to shop or whatever, Imogen first attunes and asks the simple question, is it safe to go out today to Checkers where we're going to shop? If she gets yes, we go. If she gets no, we don't go. Simple. So if you're with your family and you're doing that and you get no, and you know you must listen because this is the soul telling you something and it knows everything, you have to say to your family or to your partner or whatever, no, we're not going out shopping today because I got no, and therefore we are not going out. It's not safe for whatever reason. I don't know the reason, but the soul knows it. And then the family starts arguing with you, saying you're crazy, you're mad. No, you listen to your soul. You don't listen to outside voices. So that's where you need courage. Because without that type of courage, you're not going to succeed in listening to the soul. You know.
Look, I think right now it's about you as an individual and individualizing yourself and attaining the highest vibrational space you can. It's not right now about worrying, I think, about those that aren't listening to you, and we've got to get to these heights individually so that we can then work collectively.
Yes, and it's also like, where courage comes is like, do individuals who tune into their soul and are dedicating themselves to that sort of inner work combined with their outer life and outer work, obviously. People like that must have the courage to say to their partner or their children or their parents or whatever, look, this is me. This is me taking responsibility for my life by making alignment with my soul, my higher self, and regarding that as a vital, integral part of my entire life. I'm not making it more important than cooking the food or making the bed or having a bath or going out shopping. But this is essential to my life. And please do not attempt in any way to negate that aspect of my life, because that comes first for me. And that is the most vital thing. And if people don't have the courage to tell anyone who is trying to negate that aspect of themselves or say it's a lot of nonsense, a lot of rubbish, then of course they're not going to be able to do what they need to do.
They won't be able to individualize. And you started off by saying this is now individualization.
Yes, it's very interesting that the actual rising sign of the conjunction, plotted according to Greenwich Mean Time, because that's how you plot global charts, is in fact Leo. And Leo is the sign of individualization.
Yeah. Okay.
So the deeper purpose behind the conjunction, not the overall, not the everything energy, but the kind of, shall we say, the focal point is individualization, to individualize, and that answers your question about freedom.
Yeah, I understand.
The only way a person becomes free is if they live from within themselves out.
Get it.
And that's freedom. That's what freedom means.
Get it.
It's almost, there's no such thing as freedom, like political freedom or economic freedom or social freedom or whatever freedom, if you're not living from within yourself out.
Okay, thanks.
If you don't do that, you're still a prisoner. Yeah.
Does everyone get all that? I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
sure.
So that's the important thing. So people should just be aware, be ready. That maybe people will be quite shocked and surprised by how quick this energy comes through and the change it brings. But at least people are conscious of that. The small things must be done with conscious awareness on a daily basis. Whatever it is, washing dishes, making the bed, cleaning the floor, looking after the garden, feeding the animals, because that keeps people anchored the whole time.
It's true.
And to balance the small things with the bigger things, and so on and so on. And just to be ready for what's
that's amazing.
Coming and how to manifest.
Thank you so much, Errol. I think it's just been a wealth of information, and for everybody, it is recorded. Just takes a little bit of time, sometimes an hour and a half or more to download. Once we finish, Errol, I've got to download it and then upload it. So I'm just telling everybody, it takes a little bit of time, but you'll definitely be getting this one and all the others. And well, Errol, we're wishing you and Imogen the most amazing entry into the age of Aquarius. I know that you've been gunning for this for a very, very, very long time and preparing hundreds, if not thousands, of people for this. And your work's doesn't go unnoticed. And I just want to say to all of you listening in, all right, if you haven't ever had your natal chart read, I suggest for a really small fee, Errol will do it for you. And Errol, can we just have your phone number so that I can put it on here and people can WhatsApp you? Is it the same number, hey, the 076?
Well, that's a WhatsApp number. My normal cell, which is probably better to phone me on under.
All right, I'm going to put it here. So I'm going to go +27 and then
066
0666
367
367
44
00. All right. So that O, you drop the O if it's international, right?
Yeah, if it's international,
I just want to put it into brackets because someone will say they can't get through.
Yeah. Well, the best, if people want to contact me in terms of not worrying about phone numbers, etc., then the best thing is just to email me, rainbowzodiac@gmail.com.
All right, hold on. Let me put that in as well. Okay, it's Rainbow
Zodiac, one word.
ZODIAC
@gmail.com.
All right. So
because you see, because of what's happening with Jupiter and Saturn moving into Aquarius, those planets are now transiting to Aquarius from tomorrow night and of course the next 1 year to 3 years. So anyone who has placements in their chart, which are either in Aquarius, in air signs like Aquarius, Gemini, or Libra, or fire signs like Leo, Sagittarius, Aries, the Jupiter-Saturn transits are going to activate those placements in their chart.
Yeah. And I can just speak from personal experience. Well, as I said to you, it's almost on an annual basis. Errol reads my charts and he gives me the, what do you call those things? The transits.
The transits.
Yeah, so the year's broken up into different transits because suddenly Mercury will come in, or Pluto will come in, or Jupiter smashes the Saturn, or whatever it is, and it's quite useful and predictive to use. And I've used it with my children. I had my children's natal charts read, and Errol was accurate to a T. And so when my children came and told me, well, the one in particular, Mom, I'm going into the world. I'm leaving South Africa. I'm going to study finance and all of this. It wasn't a question of me using my old framework and saying, well, no, you shouldn't really leave South Africa, or you shouldn't. I just knew. And it was, okay, fine. Where do we book the ticket? Because I knew already, based on what Errol had told me so many years ago as well, and it's all manifested. Errol, my son's in the UK right now, and he's having the biggest ball of his life.
Where's he living in the UK?
He's in Exeter at the university there.
All right, great.
We opened up the pathway for him, and just to share a little bit of personal information, because as you know, I don't really do this, but it was so enormous. He got a global academic scholarship to pay a third of the fees for 3 years on top of it. So you see, by me not putting the brakes on, and by him following his absolute mission in life and all the rest of it, it manifested 3, 4, 5 times probably what we even visualized.
Great.
So I thank you for that.
I don't know if he has any connections or wants to have any connections or is interested, but one of the biggest Steiner schools in Britain is in Exeter, and one of the main teachers there, Jennifer, who's a very good friend of ours, actually is one of the top people in the Steiner school, in the Exeter Steiner school. If ever he happens to have any contact
That's
with
amazing.
them, just ask for Jennifer.
Good, I'm going to tell him. Thank you so much. He's positioned himself in such a place because he's got this worldly view that he now has a friend in nearly every, I use the word loosely, corner of the earth, and that's what he wanted. And I mean, he's 19, he's self-made already. So I thank Errol for this, because he literally showed me the way, the doors opened, and this is what can happen if we're working with the flow, with actually astrologically.
Because what happens with the Jupiter and Saturn transits to Aquarius now, which governs the new future, so to speak, is that whatever placements they're activating in people's charts are then going to indicate to people how this new future is manifesting in their personal lives over 2021. That's why it's so important, the 2 transits to Aquarius, the way they activate placements in an individual's birth chart. It's saying this is your contribution towards the new future that's now unfolding. That's what transits do.
Yes.
Especially now with the ones in Aquarius.
Good. Well, everybody is saying, thank you. And let me just read this one here. Yes, Annette, Errol did say the Rudolf Steiner Center. Of course, Rudolf Steiner's been talking about individualization for the last 100 years. So it's about getting rid of the tribe. It's not about tribal stuff anymore. It's definitely collective transformation, but from with an individual space. You've got to do that self-individualization first. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, the Bryanston organic market is, of course, part of the Steiner school there. And there's a great one in Natal, where were we living in, where that Steiner place was.
Are you talking about Roseways?
No, it's the community, Hillcrest in Natal, which is about an hour or so out of Durban, has a very big, wonderful Steiner school there. So yes, the Steiner people, I mean, we're all over Britain. The Steiner schools are literally all over Britain and all over Europe. So they're doing great work in their own particular way, obviously. But of course, this is global. So it's bigger than any institution, bigger than any.
Absolutely. I just I just made reference to that because that was when I first heard about you know, the individualization, and it's all makes absolutely perfect sense, and it's amazing, and lots for us all to digest. So everybody, you know what, your world's your oyster. It's never been as great as this. So you know, from a creativity point of view, and imagination, intuition, inspiration point of view, create that space that you're looking for. I've posted a little thing about, I'll send it to you, Errol. You know, you get off the train and you look out, and you know, are you looking at this beautiful place that you really want to get off the train and go and see, or are you looking at this place that looks all bummed out? It's literally, is your glass half full or half empty? You choose. And that you're going to manifest in that way. So this is where we got to let go of all that old those negative patterns, surrender to it all, really, you know, ask ourselves if it's serving us, because all it's going to do is hold us back. And we can do the manifestations in the morning, and you can free yourself up and you know, ask for your best, most benevolent timeline, and ask for the darkness and the negativity to leave you. And literally, I've talked before, go outside and get it disintegrated. And amazing how. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, carry on.
It's just amazing how light you feel when you do that, and constantly affirm these things, because it just frees you, and it gets you out of that entrapment. Sorry, Errol?
Yeah, it's also good for tomorrow night for people to meditate, whether they're meditating by themselves or meditating with a small group of people, or just tuning in globally at that 6:22 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, adjusted locally for the country. So South Africa it would be 8:22.
Yeah.
For people just to meditate half an hour to 45 minutes, to just tune in globally on the planetary level, and just, you know, be part of the great, what I like to call the collective chalice that's going to be receiving this Aquarius energy. That's the way people should, like a collective chalice that's opening up to collect for this energy to come in tomorrow night.
Beautiful. We've actually got the professor who invented the device, etc., running a shadow workshop, about a 3-hour shadow workshop, which I know is also your favorite, one of your favorite topics as well. So those of you who haven't registered, please do, because we've got a golden opportunity here again to, we can call Errol in another time to talk about the shadow as well, to you know, well, Errol, first of all, uncover the shadow, isn't it?
Oh yeah, well, if you don't uncover it, it still manifests.
It still manifests.
The thing about shadow is that it's always manifesting, so you might as well deal with it consciously than unconsciously, because if you deal with it unconsciously, it still manifests in any case, except it manifests indirectly, unconsciously. And then if something is manifesting unconsciously, of course you're not going to take responsibility for it because it's unconscious, and that creates all sorts of problems. I reckon if, you know, they say, what's it? I don't know, you probably know better than me in South Africa. I think 50% of marriages end up in divorce in South Africa or something like that.
Easily more, yeah. Probably
more. But I reckon that if people knew about the shadow and what it was and how to deal with it, and the fact that it manifests in all men and women, therefore in all marriages and relationships, but they did it consciously, that 50% of divorce would probably go down to about 20%. Because all divorces or separations occur when the shadow manifests. They don't occur when everyone's in harmony and beauty and smiling and kissing and making love, do they? They occur when there's conflicts and disharmony and fighting and ego. So if people deal with that aspect consciously, because it's always going to manifest in any relationship or partnership, then there wouldn't be divorces. It wouldn't be like, we're having a conflict, that's bad. No, it's not bad. We're dealing with the shadow, and we're dealing with it, resolving it, we're talking about it and sharing about it and becoming more wise about it. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Whereas, you know, and so if that was the case, people wouldn't get divorced or separated, because it's not a negative thing to deal with conflict and disagreements and ego stuff that comes up, and then it could be an adventure rather than kind of something we try to avoid.
And I mean, we'll see tomorrow, but I mean, to work with the shadow for maximum manifestation.
Yeah, the shadow is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
it's just something. It's an entity. How can I put it? It's an entity that's unconscious that wants to be conscious. So it's like an entity within us. Literally, you might say an actual entity that says, "Hey, stop rejecting me. Stop judging me. Stop saying I'm bad. Stop pushing me down into the underworld. Stop making me out to be evil," and so on and so on. Because while you do that to me, and I'm 50% part of you, the shadow is, I'm 50% part of you. While you reject 50% of me, while you reject me, you reject 50% of you. Therefore, you're only living a 50% life. Yeah, what kind of life is that, says the shadow? Acknowledge me. And when people learn to do that, then of course, divorce is unnecessary, separation is unnecessary. There'll still be conflicts, there'll still be shouting and screaming, there'll still be that kind of stuff, but it's not regarded as a negative, it's regarded as like a positive part of relationship, of partnership, of marriage, whatever it might be. So that's why it's so important.
And I think
of course you can go onto YouTube to Carl Jung and just type in shadow, and Jung was the master of the shadow, and you can get lots of wonderful information on YouTube about all aspects of the shadow by Carl Jung.
Well, the professor will definitely carries that baton, so it will. We will be coming with that strain completely, and of course, Leonardo da Vinci also did a lot of work with the shadow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a wise man or woman in history who hasn't dealt with the shadow more consciously. William Blake was also very, very good at dealing with the shadow more consciously.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's so exciting. Well, there's lots more, and everybody, we're in the age of knowledge now. No more belief. We have a scientific predictive astrologer right here with us, and Errol and I and Imogen go back quite a long way, and probably other lifetimes, I would imagine. But anyway, so it's all up to us. So I hope you've really enjoyed that. And Errol, thanks a million for, on the spur of the moment, literally 10 to 7 today, I called up Errol and I said, hey, do you want to come in? So, an impromptu, thanks a million. And just everything of the very, very best for tomorrow, and the world and all our networks and the 144,000 of all of us that are collectively and are going to be intuitively aligned tomorrow. It's going to be awesome, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks, Errol.
Great. So to you, Jane darling, and to all the people listening, have a great solstice. Have a great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter tomorrow night. Have a great 2021, and have a great Christ Mass. We never call it Christmas, we call it Christ Mass, and Mass of Christ energy. Because Christmas means nothing. I mean, what does it mean? It's just, I call it Lucifer Mass. Buy as much material things as you can, eat as much as you can, drink too much, and Lucifer gives a great smile and a great exaltation of joy as he sees that people are materializing what should be Christ Mass. A mass of love, a mass of light, a mass of peace, a mass of goodwill, a mass of communion, a mass of laughter, etc., etc. Do you know that this was in the Guardian newspaper, between Christmas and New Year is the time, in that short period of time, when a huge number of marriages and relationships break up, when people are going soon for divorce during that time, because of the financial pressure that so many couples come under, which break the marriage between Christmas and between the New Year. That short period of time is when people, a huge number of marriages, make the decision. It's enough.
You mean so because they overspend this period?
I mean, it's like it's overspend, they overeat, they overdrink.
Yeah.
Which has got nothing to do with Christ Mass. I mean, it's got nothing to do with Christ, so people should be aware of that. I mean, and now with the pandemic and, of course, things like that, it's a wonderful, and people, of course, losing their jobs and so on, it's a wonderful opportunity not to spend money. Money over Christmas.
Exactly.
Why go buy shit?
Yeah, and actually trap yourself even further.
Yes, and I mean, a huge number of marriages, of course, break up. There's a number of reasons with the shadow, but one aspect of the shadow is finance, is money. I mean, that's one of the main aspects that breaks up marriages and partnerships: financial insecurity, financial complexity, etc. Because of excess buying of things you don't need. Only buy what you need. It's as simple as that.
Terrible, eh?
You know? Don't buy plastic toys for kids, because what happens after a while, the kids don't use them, they're chucked away, and it just like pollutes the earth.
Well, it's worse than that, because they get all the synthetic chemicals.
Exactly. Yeah, they're breathing in chemicals. So I love you, my darling. Here's a nice present. Breathe in the chemicals and kill yourself. I wish it was a joke. It's not. Well, you know, they're going by the kids a pet dog. Or whatever, and 6 months later the kid's not interested in the dog, and they don't know what to do with the dog, and they give it away to the SPCA or whatever it might be.
Even worse.
So people should think carefully, only buy what they need, don't buy excess, and make it a celebration of Christ consciousness rather than a celebration of Lucifer consciousness.
Correct. Let's let the real sunshine shine in. We're going to end with our the Age of Aquarius song from that fifth dimension one, and let the sun shine in. And what does it say? When the moon is in the seventh house and Jupiter aligns with Mars.
Well, I got a different one. When Saturn and Jupiter align in Aquarius, this is the age of Aquarius. Aquarius.
So you can listen. I'm gonna play it now.
Good.
You're gonna hear it too. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, I've been speaking without sound. Let me just start all over again. I just wanted to say, with all my heart, I want to thank all of you for traveling this journey with us. Since March, we started the group. We've shared everything. We've worked hard at it. We've ridden the crest of the wave. We've kept ourselves out of the entrapment. We've really, as I say, with Professor Deja Dubonnet and Rita's with us too, I think we've manifested really well. And what I was saying is that Professor Deja Dubonnet is always on the button. Be there tomorrow, because there's always reasons with her. And if we can activate that 50% of the shadow that we're not using, that's actually pulling us back like a blade ball on a chain around our ankle, imagine the inner freedom that we can express thereafter, and how we're going to live. So what I was saying is, it's 150 euros. You can register on my website, 365healthybychoice.com. And if you want to do part payment, part karma's give back, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to give back, or full karmic payment, just text me on the WhatsApp. And you all got my WhatsApp, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. My private WhatsApp, and then we can work towards everyone getting registered for tomorrow. But be there, because she's on the button. There's a reason. There's always a reason with her. And I see some of you, they've left messages for me. I'm going to get onto those messages right now. Okay. Zoe, I'm going to get back to you right now as well. Okay. So tomorrow's a very big day. Enjoy it. Be open. Be free. And, individualize. Okay. And another huge thanks to Errol for coming in. Spur of the moment. I called him at 10 to 7 and I said, listen, this is your game. No one can do it better than you. And he obliged. He's actually written 1 or 2 books also on astrology. And I think he's one of the best. All right, everybody, over to you. We'll meet tomorrow, 7 o'clock South African time. And get a good rest. Make sure you're fully hydrated and ready for action. Okay, and there'll also be a management WhatsApp group for in case we lose a link or in case you want further processing. Who knows? All right. You should be able to be hearing now. My volume is on high. Okay. All right, and then the recording is coming. I'm going to start right now. And in fact, yesterday's recording is ready now. So yesterday's will come, and then today. All right. Bye, everyone.